I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast, episode number 94. This one's with Rachel Ries, and we talk about what it's like being a musician in the time of COVID and just her life in general as a musician. And she is also a tiny home enthusiast. So we talk about tiny homes a little bit too. If you'd like to learn more about Rachel, you can find her online in various platforms, but go to hercrookedheart.com and you can find a bunch of outbound links through there. And please give her a follow on Instagram. She's on there as both Rachel Ries and Her Crooked Heart. Rachel Ries is spelled R-I-E-S. But yes, follow her on Instagram, follow her on Facebook, give her a follow on YouTube. Her YouTube channel is really good. But most importantly, how about you subscribe to her on Patreon? If you subscribe on Patreon, you'll be able to see the video of our interview, where her video is a hell of a lot clearer than mine, even though I was sitting about a foot away from my router. But I really appreciate Rachel coming on. She's a fantastic musician, fantastic person. Make sure you give her a follow and subscribe to her Patreon. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode.
I feel like I am peaking a little bit.
I can't hear it on my end.
No? Okay.
And I will adjust everything in Audition afterwards. So I'll trim off the tops.
Well, I just don't want to send you a bunch of crunchy audio. But I'm going to just bring this down a little bit. Oh. I know singing is totally different than speaking, but all right. Well,
I like the difference between, and this is how we'll start. This will be our entry point because this is a good one and we can just roll into it. I like how the difference in professionalism is you're like, I'm worried I'm peaking too much. I'm like, I should probably put on some khaki shorts over my workout shorts. That's the difference in professionalism.
It's just a different kind of professionalism.
Sure,
Both are highly professional, wearing pants and worrying about audio fidelity.
and a clean shirt. I'm wearing a clean shirt. My friend, Deer Jerk, Bryn.
Cool.
It's It's a woodcut that she then turned into a t-shirt. It's some kind of moth, thing that she is.
Moths are so cool.
She's hilarious. I don't know. This will get into, I don't know how much you know about, because I've seen you here and I know we've got mutual friends here and we've met here in Knoxville, but I don't know how much ties or knowledge you have about the region. So there you go.
Very little, it's just, you get just random potlucks of the world. I don't know. You just get like these little dishes provided to you all around. Just like you learn all these different little nuggets and these little pockets. The Knoxville. I'm trying to remember my Knoxville times. My first show there, right? Wasn't that with Aeneas? In that guitar shop,
Morlock Music.
Morlock Music. That was such a sweet night. Oh my gosh. That
was
A lot of the shows kind of vanish from memory, but that one, that one stuck with me.
I have the weirdest, like, sticky memory to where I can remember small details. But the funniest part is I can't remember the dude's name because you all were going to play at the Square Room.
Oh, that's right. And ticket sales were really bad.
Oh, was that it? See, the story we got told was that there was actually a second show booked and they were worried about not being able to load out and load in. And so you moved to Morlock Music. That's the story we were told.
Which might be true. In my memory, ticket sales were slow. And we're like, we need a solution that will not harm too many people.
And I can never
I could be totally wrong. You might be right.
And I can never remember the dude's name that was the band. I think it's Neon Indian, I think is it.
This was the other band that was booked that night?
Yes.
Okay.
He's more like an indie. He's one of those Nine Inch Nails guys. Not sounds like Nine Inch Nails, but just one dude who plays all the music, but then has a band with him at the show.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And he's very like pop, indie rock kind of guy. And I actually went to that show after your whole show.
Was it good?
Because I had tickets to both. But yeah, that's the story we got on our end.
And that might be true. But it's, it might also be that we didn't sell enough tickets, which would not be the first time.
And it was funny because, seeing Anais go through like all this stuff with Broadway and and I was like, I saw her in a tiny venue in downtown Knoxville, man. How hilarious is that?
Life is wacky.
But I've had that with a lot of bands, like so WDVX is here. I don't know if you know. So, they do
the something plate special.
Blue Plate Special.
Blue Plate Special. Okay.
So it's weird seeing like the Avett Brothers started on like the Blue Plate Special. Yeah. And now they're playing the arena here. So it's like,
that's wild.
Yeah. It's weird seeing the difference in those. But I was going to say in Knoxville, I always circle back. Bryn, Deer Jerk, who did this. So Dollywood. So Pigeon Forge, Dollywood, which is a whole mess. And then Gatlinburg is next to it. That when I was growing up, it was more of, wouldn't say it was more arts and crafts, like more handmade stuff and then cheap stuff from China. There was a place called China Bazaar that's still there that you can get throwing stars and size and real weaponry. And we're like, I don't think any of this is legal, but they've been doing it for like 50 years. So I got invited to this event called Pentaculum at a place called Aramont. Aramont is this artist retreat there in Gatlinburg, and it's very weird. Like they do pottery. I was in the 2D program where we did printmaking, and Bryn sat right behind me. We start talking one day, and she's like, "Oh, I follow you on Instagram." I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." And I followed her back, and I was like, "You have like 74,000 followers on Instagram. What the?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, I do all these band posters and stuff." I was like, "Oh my god!" And you're this doofus that's sitting behind me. Awesome. Thanks, Bryn. Yeah. But I took them to I was like, all right, guys, let's go. We're going to China Bazaar. And I took them in there. And the whole time they were just walking around going, what is happening? Why is any of this real? Yeah. It was weird. I want to go
next time I come to town.
China Bazaar is interesting. Yeah. Gatlinburg, sadly, during the pandemic, Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg has not shut down. So it's not awesome. So but anyway, where are you originally from? I don't think I know this. Where are you originally from?
I am originally from South Dakota.
Okay.
So and I'm living in Minnesota now, so neighboring.
Okay. And have you always kind of stayed up in that area, or have you? No. Oh, okay.
No. So I was born in South Dakota. When I was 4 months old, my family returned to Africa, to Zaire. It was Zaire at the time. Now it's the DRC. They returned with us 3 kids. I was the baby now. And they returned to spend 4 more years there in a little village in southern Zaire, where my dad was a doctor. So we were there until I was 4, and then we moved back to South Dakota and grew up in just a rural farming community where my dad was born and raised. so I was there until 18. Yeah, I
Okay.
was there through high school. I tried so hard to graduate early. I had all the credits. I had all the everything. I wanted out so bad. But I went to a very, very small private Mennonite high school, junior high and high school, and I grew up in a Mennonite community, and they would not let me graduate early despite all my AP courses and everything because they wouldn't let me get my Bible, like my Bible and chapel credits.
My God.
I was like, I could test out. You want to play Bible trivia? I will crush. But regardless, I
I
had
like
to
you're
stay,
bringing the football mentality to it. I
right?
can beat this. I will destroy.
Yep. I mean, there's plenty of that in the Bible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to stick it out and graduate with the rest of my class. There were we had the biggest class in decades with 18 students in the graduating class. So
Wow.
that's where I come from. But it's a great town. I mean, every town has its bad sides, but
Right.
it's a square mile town of 1,300 people.
Oh,
That doesn't
wow. Okay.
193 right now, I think. I'm not sure actually. I think the sign just changed. But it's a very musical, very creative, very yeah, like a bunch of farmers with PhDs, a bunch of farmers, you know,
Wow.
farmers with mad musical chops.
Are,
Yeah.
I don't know how to, is everyone in that town kind of, are they Mennonite too?
No,
Or,
no,
okay.
there's um, um, random, interesting, probably only me, Anabaptist facts. But the area where I come from in South Dakota is the only place in the world where all three of the Anabaptist branches settled together. So Anabaptism starts back in the Reformation. Basically, my people didn't believe that Martin Luther, was taking it far enough.
Right.
Anabaptists are all about pacifism and separation of church and state and adult baptism and other things. But so my people were, heretics compared to Luther. And over time, kind of three different main groups, things branched, like the core of the Mennonites, that's most of them. And then there's the Amish broke off from the main group and kind of stayed sort of in the past. And then the Hutterites are another division. And the Hutterites live in colonies. They live in community. There's still shared fundamental beliefs among the three groups. That's kind of the main thing. Within Mennonites, though, there's the old order, bonnets, no electricity kind of Mennonites that I can't tell the difference between the Amish. And then there's the whole other spectrum of very socially liberal. I mean, I know trans Mennonites. There's this spectrum. So, but
What,
overall, like
what led them
focused.
to South Dakota? Like,
Oh, well, back then, what the late 1800s, I mean, they were fleeing at that point, the Russian Revolution. The Anabaptists had been taken in. They're Germanic. We're Germanic. The Germanic Mennonites, Anabaptists, are now the minority, but that's the roots of it, right? So my people ended up kind of being taken in by Catherine the Great, and they were safe
Okay.
there until shit hit the fan in Russia, and then there was kind of a scattering of different groups, and there'd been like a kind of a group of Anabaptist scouts kind of who came to figure out where there was land, farming people, where they could continue their faith and their way of life. And so that's how South Dakota happened. And of course, as time goes on, you realize, oh, that wasn't just like open, empty, barren land to be given away, was it? Oh, whoops. A lot of people died, a lot of indigenous people. So there's just the messy accounting for
yeah, that
ignorance of the past. Like
that was
everyone's
literally
complicit.
Yeah, that was literally trending on Twitter this morning. That some idiot. I quit trying to name the idiots because there's just so many of them.
There are so many.
Who was like, yeah, no, nothing was here. Oh, except for the Native Americans. I was like, yeah, literally, it's in the name, Native American. Like, what is? Oh God, you're so dumb. You're so dumb. That somebody put up a meme that says, this is what we get for letting our football coaches teach history in high school. And sadly, I either had history or geography with my head football coach, and I do not know which class it was because this guy Jeff and I would go down to the locker room, work out, clean up the locker room, and we were both artistic, so we would paint the ad signs that went on the side of the football field. Don't know if it's history or geography. Have no idea. So that leads me to
neither what you were learning.
Going from South Dakota to Zaire. How big is Zaire? Like that community in South Dakota is very small.
Right.
Like, is Zaire was it a major city back then?
Zaire was a state. Sorry.
Okay, state.
Zaire was the Belgian Congo, and then it became Zaire, and now it's the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's that big country that's sort of in the middle where Africa goes from being big to kind of narrowing down, right? It's right in the middle there. It's large.
I should start saying place, not city or state.
Place to cover your butt. Geography. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Football coach.
Accurate meme. Accurate
It
meme.
was we lived in a little village with a mission station. I don't remember how big it was because I was a toddler running around and having a grand old time playing in the red dirt. And we had a pet monkey for a little while because its mom was poached, and so we were like, I was like a little baby bottle feeding a baby monkey. I'm sure there's photographic documentation.
I was going to say, if there's a photo, that needs to be an album cover at some point.
There is. There's some good ones. My dad's been going through all the old slides lately.
Oh wow!
Just get these nuggets in the inbox from him. But South Dakota until I graduated, and then I went to live on an intentional community in the North Woods of Wisconsin for the summer before. So I was, living off the grid. It was very kind of social justice, activism, and living off the land focused place. So that's where I was. Because I was a strange kid already, clearly. So I went there for the summer. Then I went to college.
Okay.
And in northern Indiana at this Mennonite University, and called Goshen. And Goshen was great, but I realized pretty quickly that I was living someone else's life and trying to follow in the footsteps of what I was supposed to do, and that it wasn't my path. And so I dropped out halfway through my second semester.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, was the focus at that school to go into some kind of ministry or something? No. Okay.
Just like a liberal arts.
Okay.
Liberal arts university, just Mennonite affiliated.
Okay.
No, I think you did. I think you had chapel requirements that you had to show up for. Yes, I think so. And there was a robust religion and peace studies curriculum that wasn't required, but I kind of created my own. I had an interdisciplinary major of religion, philosophy, and peace studies, and a minor in music to keep some scholarship money. And it was great. And I made a lot of friends, but that was not my path, and that was not my life. After living in that intentional community, I think a common theme of my life has been, don't just talk about something. Don't just talk about philosophy or talk about activism or talk about this or that. Go out and do it. Your hands are made for something. And I had very little patience back then for this homogenous, primarily white, 18 to 22 little safe bubble of chatter. Mm-hmm. I wanted action. I wanted to live my life now. So I dropped out, and I really It was really hard for my parents. They were that was a hard time. We've worked through it, but
What do your folks do for a living?
they are now
You
in
said
like joyful
doctor.
retirement age. But yeah, dad was a GP. I still like I remember him having a doctor's bag, and he would small town like he would
Yeah.
do not every day, but he would do house calls. Wonder where that little doctor's bag is. I call dibs. Siblings.
It's official. You've heard it on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's official.
But so he was a family practice, and also worked on the family farm. My uncle farms the family farm, so that was always a requirement of our existence, and still for my dad. He spent a lot of time out there with Dwayne, and my mom did different volunteer work, church work stuff, and she's a great art quilt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quilter, like conventional quilts, but also does like wacky, beautiful pictorial things. She's a very creative-minded person who, growing up, that was very much not encouraged. So.
Oh, for them, but for you all.
Yeah, for her.
Yeah.
For me, my generation, very much it was encouraged. Incredible how supportive my parents have been of my bizarre life.
And out of the three of you,
yeah,
were you all encouraged? Like, were your parents musically inclined, or did they kind of? I've heard some people like. I'm trying to remember who it was. It's somebody, maybe a friend of mine that had 3 kids, and they're like, "Okay, you have to pick 3 different instruments. We're not going to have all piano. Like somebody has to do piano, somebody has to do violin, somebody has to do guitar," and that's what they did. Like in that grouping. So
have a family band.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm regularly astounded at the lack of control my parents tried on any of us. There's always like societal pressures, but
right.
But no, I mean, we were all very encouraged to do music. I think we had to, like, we did have to take some kind of lessons, but it wasn't, it was up to us what we chose. So let me think. So we all did take piano lessons, which is so foundational and helpful. Mm-hmm. I'm very grateful for that. We were all, by our own desires, very involved in choir. Both my siblings and I my siblings can sing beautifully. We all have those chops. And my brother plays some guitar, but when I was 5, I informed my parents that I wanted to play violin, and I was very, very, very adamant about that, and they still are baffled about that. But so that was my first instrument. When I was 5, I started playing violin.
Okay.
And then piano when I was 7 or 8 or something, I'm not sure. And then other things. And then I got rebellious and then taught myself guitar.
And then when you went through that glockenspiel phase from like 2002,
I'm still in the glockenspiel. Now you want me to pull mine out?
I was just making a joke. I was trying to think would be the most weird instrument, the glockenspiel. Yeah, I felt like that would be it. Okay.
Yeah.
But they weren't musically like.
No, they are. Yeah.
Oh, they are. Your parents are. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't very nurtured because in any kind of occupational sense, but music is just such a big part of my home community.
Okay.
From the singing in church, the hymns, the 4-part harmony. Like my church community can sing like nobody's business.
Right.
It's just, and it's not the praise and worship kind of music. It's the old school, heavy harmonied hymns. And there's not a monotone singer in the bunch. It's beautiful to go home and sing.
But at home, were like your parents exposing you to, I hate to say secular music because it sounds so risque or something, but were they in, like, who were some of the people that they would play for you around the house?
I remember very distinctly my mom singing to me Karen Carpenter, singing Karen Carpenter around the house, who one of my favorite voices of all time is Karen Carpenter. And my mom could, especially then, she could sing just like Karen Carpenter.
Wow.
That like beautiful, like velvety alto. Yeah. Just my mom could totally channel Karen. And so around the house, there was definitely a lot of sacred music and orchestra, symphony kind of stuff. There's a lot of classical that gets played. But I also remember Mannheim Steamroller.
Oh God.
Mannheim Steamroller and
I don't
the
mean to
Swingle
laugh.
Singers. It's okay. And the Swingle Singers, you know what I'm talking about?
Swingle Singers? No.
Oh my gosh, you need to do some Googling of the Swingle Singers. It's kind of like
make a note.
Scat, like white choral scatting.
Oh my God.
Like it's wild. It's awesome. And an album that I very, very clearly remember from childhood is Graceland, Paul Simon.
Yeah.
And I should talk with mom and dad about it. It makes sense in my head. It follows some logic that coming back from 10 years in Africa, Graceland and Paul Simon was an album that could bridge the two worlds and make some kind of sense in the middle.
Yeah.
Like very, very South Africa, but very African, like influence, obviously. That's a huge element of that album, but definitely American secular music merged into one. And so I wonder if that got a lot of play for us because it was bringing the two together.
Ties.
In that weird time of readjusting and trying to figure out how to be normal Americans and all that.
Normal Americans. That's a weird phrase to say in 2021.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're up to you dropped out of
tangent. Yeah.
Oh no. I always bring us back. So you dropped out of college.
Dropped out of college. Going home to South Dakota was not an option. My parents were not very happy with me. And that felt like too much of a regression anyway. So I went back to that intentional community for a few months to kind of regroup. And I got a job outside of the community through a temp agency working at a woodworking factory.
Oh, wow.
Because I needed to save up money. I needed to find any money whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I had these like mandatory 12-hour work days in this bleak, when I say woodworking factory, it's more like laminate and toxic substances and like putting together little wire. Yeah. It was, that was an interesting, that was, I think maybe kind of the first time I was like, oh, there are different classes. And I just realized that I'm in a different one. Right. And I'm not comfortable with this. Like, I don't know what I was in a factory, like in the North Woods of Wisconsin, and it was, I don't know, they could just smell it on me no matter what I was wearing, that I had at least started to go to college,
right.
That I come from a different, I don't even know like how you would define it, but a lot of my coworkers, there's no higher education, and it's definitely sort of manufactured home parks and that kind, and I could feel this difference, and I could feel this like sense of superiority in me, and it made me really uncomfortable, and I didn't feel like I belonged, but I didn't know how I didn't know what I was doing that showed that I come from a different background. Yeah, it was just an interesting experience to feel like such an outsider, in such a different world.
Right.
I don't know. It was super interesting. I still don't know what to think about it.
I'm also thinking of the fact that you lived in Africa, and saying that to them probably fried their brains.
Sure,
of like,
maybe.
Oh, you just picked up and moved to across literally an ocean to get to another country. That's what you did. Like, here in Knoxville, I grew up pretty poor. and I grew up on the black side of town. And so I look at, so my graduating class gets laughed at a lot, although good Lord, after yours, like it's nothing. Like, my graduating class had between 103 and 108 students.
That's big.
So the freshman class, my senior year was 1,200 kids.
Holy cow.
Like it went up that quick, but Fulton was a predominantly black high school. So I've always knew I was very lucky in how I grew up and what I was exposed to. But recently it's really started dawning on me that, like, you talked about religion earlier, grandmother's hardcore Baptist.
Yeah.
Like, but the family that lived behind her were Catholic. And the couple that lived across the street from her they had survived the concentration camps. They had tattoos on their arm. So at like 4 or 5, I got to have that conversation with, I think, my grandfather or grandmother of like, why do they have no, because that was also in the 80s to where nobody had tattoos except for bikers and sailors. So it was like, why do these people have writing on their arm? And having to learn that, and then going back to the black community, like it was, I'm super fortunate in how I grew up, but it's also in the same way of like growing up that poor and that way, you know, kids in my high school felt lucky to get to go to Dollywood. Like that was their big vacation, to go to Dollywood for a week. Like to get a $100, $75, I think it's $75 at that point pass. Like that was a big deal for them. Like, and then I hear other friends, I interviewed one person who came from the wealthy part of town. I was like, she was talking about post-college. She said, I went to so-and-so country I was like, oh, was that your first time out of the country? She's like, no, I'd been like 10 times. I was like, okay, that's a completely foreign world to me. Like, and where I grew up with, and actually in a sad fact, because it keeps happening, 3/4 of my graduating class are dead, in prison, or have done jail time.
3/4?
3/4. We're up to 3/4 at this point. We just lost another guy. We lost 4 guys.
Oh my gosh.
In like 1 month. I think it was this time last year. 2 to heart attack and 2 to suicide. And it's just, it's insane. So when you're sitting there talking about these workers, I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, I've got friends. I am very fortunate. I work for myself doing design and all that stuff, but I've got friends that they're like, hey, I made line cook at Texas Roadhouse, and that's awesome. Like I was like, yeah, that's the world we came for. I go up and talk at the school, and I keep telling the kids, I was like, you can make it in the arts. I was like, I'm from here, and look at me, I'm an idiot. Like, I was like, you can make it out of here. I was like, you can do that. Don't let anybody tell you. I just point and yell at the kids a lot. Like, you can do it.
Always works.
Yeah, I know. Oh, one of the kids, he started. I still love this. We were talking about something. He was like, oh, I know Photoshop. I was like, oh, you're going to be my best friend now, because all I'm going to do is pick on you this entire time. So I'd start talking to the kids. I go, you know what I'm talking about. And his 3 friends were just giggling the whole time. And then afterwards, I was like, listen, kid, if you're really serious and want to do this, here's my email. Email me. We will talk. I will show you how to do stuff. But you can get the hell out of here. I made it out of here. I made it out of here where we had guns on campus every single day. Like, you can do it. Like, so yeah, talking about those factory workers, I'm like, oh yeah, I know those guys that you worked with. But this is going to be a spoiler alert for later. So when you were working there, what were you doing? Did you get to learn woodworking? Is that
nothing? No, not at all. That's why I said it was like really like a laminate and toxic.
Yeah, that's right. So there was no,
if I'm not mistaken, when I was there, we were fulfilling some big order for Target. I think it was Target, making these sort of laminate boxes. Like they used to have these little like sort of kiosk boxes kind of closer to the entrance where you could go into this little box, step in it, like, there was 3 walls, and fill out an application to work.
Oh yeah.
So
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. That's what we were putting together.
Wow.
Just manufacturing those, and then like the wiring to go in there.
Right.
And I ended up getting fired because I was a temp, right?
Right.
But I was getting crazy headaches because like I kind of had to crawl into this like inside underneath sort of like the desk area and put this chemically something
Oh yeah.
adhesive something in there, and it was noxious, and I was getting headaches, and I was like, this isn't safe for any of us.
Yeah.
Like, I guess I said something, or I don't know if I would have asked for a mask or what, but they're like,
she's one of those book learners. Get her out of
and she's a temp. Screw her. She's out. Yeah.
I worked in a print shop for 5 years, and one of my friends who's a web designer, I did business cards for him, and he came in, he walked in the door, and he was like, what is that smell? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, that can't be good for you. And he was in there 5 minutes and got a splitting headache from all the press wash and all that. And I was like, oh, I grew, because Fulton was also a vocational school. So I took print shop for 4 years. I was like, I used to eat lunch with ink and press wash on my hands. It's like, I've got probably so much stuff in me that's just coded at this point.
And, you know, we only use like what, 4% of our brain anyway. So don't worry about those cells. It's fine.
Yeah. I start twitching all of a sudden halfway through. Yeah. Oh, that's what's killed all the, I don't need to know the difference between African city states and countries. It's not the football coach thing. It's I burn it out of my head. Okay. So you're working there.
And that
was in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
That was back at
Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Balsam Lake, Rice Lake, Luck, Wisconsin area. And then at the end of that academic year, so all my, friends were still in college, but I'd pieced out. I had saved up money to go join a bunch of college friends and live in Denver for the summer. A bunch of my friends back then, and I'm still good friends with one of them now, but we're in a college band called Lotus, and they are still in existence, and they are quite renowned in the world.
Really?
Like they're very successful in the world of kind of, back then they'd be like ambient trance funk. There's a whole world, like the crazy light shows, and
this is sounding
really
familiar.
Lyrics,
this is sounding very familiar.
It's music to trip to in a lot of ways. Lots of dreadlocks and dancing, and maybe less dreadlocks now. But anyway, those are my college buddies, and one of them is still a close friend. So I lived in Denver with this like white funk band.
Oh my God.
And a French foreign exchange student who was avoiding conscription, and he would cook amazing French meals for us.
Wow.
And there's like 7 or 8 of us in this 3-bedroom house. And it was filthy and chaotic. And I worked at the Tattered Cover bookstore.
I was going to say at that point, because I feel like Denver has only gotten...
Okay.
Denver has only really kind of burst in like the last 7 to 8 years. Because when I was there in 2010, you would go downtown at night and you wouldn't see anybody else walking around, or, it wasn't that busy until you went down to the baseball stadium.
Yeah.
To see a game.
I think it's a very different, it was very different then when not very, but this was well before any of the bursting of that. That would have been in, in 1999.
Oh, okay. Okay.
When I was 19, I think. That checks out. Oh my gosh, yeah. 99. That's when I lived in Denver. Hilarious. I mean, just for a summer.
But I am finding a theme, though. Except for Africa, you're staying in pretty cold, climated areas. You're staying
that's only
above us.
Then after that, I go back to Goshen for live in the college town a little bit,
right?
Because that's where all my friends were. Got a job at the coffee shop and for this nonprofit, and kind of just lived there. That was a good but kind of wild stretch of I don't know, all the stuff, all the chaos you go through when you're 19, 20, 21. So much chaos, right? And I was a good kid, so I didn't really start, drinking alcohol until I was closer to 21, and I didn't really do, growing up a lot. Some people had the perception that I was a bad girl and I was on drugs and I was a bad influence, and I didn't do any of any of that stuff when I was a teenager. But more experimenting happened in that 19, 20, 21 range, and but those were good years, but like lots of heartache, so many doomed crushes and brief datings, and I was never good with that kind of stuff. I was never the girl that the boys wanted, or the girl that the girls wanted. I just was always alone and pining for love, which was, great song fodder.
That sounds very familiar. I just channeled all that into art. I can't sing a lick. I can't play I can play the banjo and the bass very poorly. Yeah. But all of that. There's a band that's from here called the V-Roys that Scott Miller has gone on his own. But I think 3 of the band members, and I'm friends with them. But I've never met Scott because I don't know the polite way to say him. One of your albums was my heartbreak album. Like every time I was pining for someone or something, I would listen to that album, and it's only like 35 minutes on repeat, just on because it was everything up and down. I was like, I can't tell you. I know every pluck of the guitar. I know everything to that album. Yeah. And I can't tell you how much it means to me, and I'm probably just going to hug you, dude. I hope you're okay with that. I'm just going to hug you, man.
I hope you do that one day. I think for me, one of my main albums
get in your feelings is what I always call that. When you need to get in your feelings and root around a little bit.
Which is kind of always for me, especially back then. But one record that sticks out from that time frame is Over the Rhine, Good Dog, Bad Dog.
Oh, yeah.
That record and her singing, oh my gosh, I would just let myself be held by that. But yeah, I mean, for me, music was like throughout all of this, just always obsessed with music, and always had the burning, blistering determination. Like I knew that I needed to make music. I needed to be one of them.
Okay, so throughout all these travels, you weren't going up at like singer-songwriter nights or anything? You weren't trying to seek that out?
Yeah, I was writing music and making music, and playing for college house parties, and having some of my first recording sessions, playing different duos with my friend Jay Lapp, doing the Steel Wheels. Do you know that band?
Oh yeah.
Those are also good college buddies. Jay and I would play shows together, kind of as a duo. Trent went to a different Mennonite school. But yeah, those are my Mennonite boys.
That's a band I have not heard that name in a while. I don't know why. Yeah.
Great. Always, I mean, everyone knew me as like, that's what I did. I made music. And then in those post-college but college town years, I made my very first full length. I put out a demo in high school. But my first full length CD came out, I think in 2000. Recorded it when I was 19. I think we put it out when I was in 2000 when I was 20. It's not good, but it's I don't know if you remember, Jody, but last year here during the pandemic, I did a whole like series of playing through all my albums.
I remember that because you and Jill Andrews, who I know a little bit too, she did that too, like at the same time. I was like, this is cool. The two people on completely different platforms are doing this.
Yeah. But at the the very last one I did was sort of a surprise. Okay, I've been saying that I was going to play my entire catalog, but surprise, there's actually one that came out before any of y'all know, and I've been trying to keep it a secret, but here you go. So I learned a bunch of songs off of Shrine, that first CD, and played them for that final installment. And it was really fun. And it allowed me to be a lot more compassionate to that early songwriter, overwrought, poorly edited me. You know, I'm still not perfect, that's for sure, but man, I'm glad I learned a few things between then and now. Yeah. But yeah, so I was living the, you know, the college dropout, college town life for a
Right.
while, and always with a hurting, heavy heart, and probably drinking too much, which never helps the balance of things. And I remember going to at some point I got a therapist ever so briefly, and I didn't like her from the very first session, and I knew I knew that she had pigeonholed me, and she had made a decision about who I was and how I was and what I needed to do. I could just tell, and so I was very much on guard, and she wanted to put me on antidepressants, and I told her no.
Yeah.
And that I was gonna fix myself in a different way. And so I packed up my stuff and I went to go live in Scotland for a summer.
Okay.
Because I was obsessed with that country.
Okay.
And I had traveled there traveled there the year before, and I'd made some friends who ran this little vegetarian cafe. And they're like, yeah, come back and work for us. Sure. Like,
Oh my God.
work for room and board. And so I lived in this little house in the Scottish countryside, and I'd hitchhike into work on the western coast. And just, I think it's so helpful sometimes to step really far back from your life and look from a distance. And yeah, my plan for mental health I think I just turned 21 by that point. My plan was remove myself from the situation for a summer and live in a beautiful place, and then come back to America and move back to my hometown, move back to South Dakota. And we have like kind of two family farms that are adjacent.
Okay.
They were like homesteads.
Yeah.
My uncle farms all the land, but he lives on one homestead and then rents out the one that's the field over. And Dwayne let me work for my rent in the farmhouse. And so I just lived in the country in South Dakota for almost 2 years. I was a farmhand.
How long were you in Scotland?
That was just a summer.
It was just a summer. Okay.
Just a summer, yeah.
Okay.
But I knew I was going home, and I was going to go home because I had hated where I grew up. I had a lot of resentment for my hometown. And I knew at 21, bless my little heart, that if I moved home and got to know my hometown, got to understand my community, the community that raised me, I would then be able to love where I come from and the world that raised me. And then I believed that I would be able to understand and love myself. And that was,
wow.
I didn't want to take meds.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. Just remove myself from, all of the crazy, tumultuous relationships of that time, and stop drinking as much, and just, be alone with my boredom, be alone with my depression, get to know the world that raised me.
You're sounding like a football player. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to kick its ass. I'm just
There's a lot of that in me.
I'm going to plow right there. So,
yeah, this is hard. Okay, you're going to do it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to, yeah. I'm pointing to no one. I'm just, so you have two siblings. You're the youngest.
Yeah.
Are they on more, I hate to say normal, I'm going to use air quotes when I say that, normal tracks? Or are they also like, you're the free roaming, you're the wild child? Are they, one's an accountant and one's one's a podiatrist,
To say that their paths have been like very straight and normal would not be accurate. they've done their fair bit of winding, but they managed to kind of stay closer to the path,
Right.
at least to a certain extent, with lots of detours. But yeah, my brother is an ER doctor, and my sister as of very recently, she helps kind of run an sort of like an outpatient drug addiction
Wow.
therapy
Okay.
program.
So they stayed closer to your dad's line of work, like in the medical-ish
Yeah,
field. Yeah.
I think we all, though, I think if you dig down a couple layers, we're all very, very motivated by healing
Okay.
and healing and human connection.
Have they kept
Like,
up, like, throughout all that? Have they kept up with, like, I'm still playing music, I'm still doing artistic efforts on the side to kind of keep my mind right now?
um, not as much. I think my sisters maybe come back to that a little bit. Um, my brother got himself a mandolin a few years back, and so
Oh, yeah.
he plays it time to time, and it makes me so happy when I see him
That's
doing that. It
awesome.
really seems like a mental health thing for him, because he's got 3 kids,
Mm.
twins who are 8, little one is 6 as of today, and he's a doctor, and my
Yeah.
God, that's intense. So, yeah,
That's good. That's good. Some people,
yeah,
it just takes time to come back around to. It's like, I've
yeah,
got one friend who hasn't painted in like 15, 20 years and just recently got back into it. I was like, good, you're back. Like,
yeah,
almost the
yeah.
other way where I'm coaching, like, keep us up. I
Yep,
want to
yep,
see
yep,
it. I want to keep seeing it going.
yeah,
Don't stop. And she was like, this sucks. I was like, no, it doesn't. Give it to me. I'll take it.
yeah.
Then you do another one. Do another one. Get rid of that one.
And then another one.
Do another one.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
just keep fussing of like, no, it's fine. You're back. It's all good.
yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
you are writing songs. You've recorded an
Always,
album
yeah.
and you went
Always
back to
writing.
the homestead
Yeah.
and are now working on the farm
On the
and
farm, yep.
getting your mind right.
Yep, absolutely.
And how long did you stay?
Sitting in my loneliness.
Yeah.
I was there for a year and 8 months living on the farm, 3-bedroom farmhouse. It was beautiful. I had a big old garden. And that was a real foundational, yeah, it's like leaving college was very much a reclamation of my life. Like, I'm not on the right path.
Right.
This is not mine. And I need to, firmly, plant my flag or, whatever, like
Yeah.
reclaiming my life. That's what felt like. And then as well, like moving back to South Dakota to do not what most 21-year-olds do.
Right.
Also felt like, nope, I'm straying again. I was going off the way, and I needed to kind of recenter. Yeah, so I was farmhand, and I had a couple odd jobs, and worked in the nursing home in my hometown, and yeah, and it was a crucial time. It was great. It did so much for my creativity and my mental health, and my relationship with my parents and my home community, huge. And then I knew that I was ready to go out into the world
Okay.
and make more music. And I had a friend who I'd met at an open mic in Sioux Falls. A couple friends, 3 friends. They're like, you need to come to Kerrville, Texas, to the Kerrville Folk Festival. I was like,
Okay.
okay, that sounds like that's where my people are. I'm ready to go find my people. And so I packed up my stuff, and me and my friend Matt Faulkner, one of the South Dakota boys, we drove down to Missouri because he knew some people. We were going to live in Missouri and sort of set up community, like make a artist community along the Missouri River. Dropped off our stuff and kept going down to Texas for the Kerrville Folk Festival when I was 23, I think, 2003. went to the Kerrville Folk Festival for the first time. And I don't know if you're familiar,
I've never even heard of Kerrville, Texas.
Oh
Like
man,
that's
so it's in
a
like
new one.
the high country of it's like an hour 15 from San Antonio and Austin, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Um, Beautiful country, and it's a festival that is 17, 18 days long, and it's all like songwriter focused.
Okay.
So it's not like a bluegrass festival. It's not it's all about songwriting. Like, and that takes a lot of different forms, but
Right.
I knew that's where I was gonna find, from what I'd heard, that was where I was gonna find my tribe of people who were obsessed with language and putting it into song. And sure enough, that's where Aeneas and I met, and forged, one of the strongest, best friendships of my life. A whole bunch of other, Lewis Ledford, Robert Blake. I was in a band with these people for a while. Matt Faulkner. So many incredible songwriters. Gregory Alan Isakov.
Oh yeah.
You know him?
Oh yeah.
That's where we met. And so I go back, I think 4 years I went to that festival. It was a huge part.
So when you get there
Jonathan
and you're
Byrne.
there a couple of days,
Yeah.
did it feel, I hate to use the path analogy, but did it almost feel like the train got back on the track? So like, no, this is what I need to be doing, and kind of.
Well, I wasn't off the tracks at that point.
Okay.
Like me being in South Dakota, like that was necessary. Like I was writing and getting better and learning about music. And
Okay.
becoming a better human, and now I was ready to go out into the world. And
so you had already kind of found your tribe there in South Dakota of like, here's all these like-minded people that are like me.
No, not in South Dakota. No, but I had found my own internal tribe.
Okay. Okay.
Like I was now ready to take these songs that I'd been writing and go out into the world and find my people now. And that's, what I found in Kerrville. And that was that. The people I met there are still very, very foundationally important as in terms of career and songcraft. And I changed my mind about living in Missouri with Matt, and I packed up all my things again very last minute, and I moved to Chicago. And I accidentally lived there for 6 years. But when I was in Chicago, that's when I started actually making records and touring, and my career as it's known started in Chicago.
You're getting to Missouri. You're getting to where it's going to be above 80 one day. And you're going to be like, nope, got to go somewhere. I'm just kidding.
It was so hot and humid. And I was doing manual labor. I was like building these dry stack rock walls that were kind of like works of art. I was like, this sucks. I sprained my ankle and I was hot. I was like,
I'm kind of happy that we're in this good place. Like my window just buckled because it's so windy here right now. Like I'm watching my big tree just go back and forth. But I know the minute it hits May, it's going to be 95 degrees and 98% humidity. And it'll be that way until September, early October. And speaking of shorts, so I jokingly refer to that I wear winter shorts because I wear shorts in the wintertime. Like,
of course,
I should have lived in your areas because I've been in New York in December like 3 different times, walking around in like a button-up shirt with my sleeves rolled up and shorts. Mm-hmm. And there was one time I was in a still pretty rough, ungentrified part of town, and I walked by a group of homeless dudes, like 4 or 5, and it was December 21st. God knows how cold it was. And I walked by this group of homeless dudes, and one of the guys went, "Did you see that guy? He's crazy." And I turned around and was like, "Don't forget that, because I'm going to be coming back through here at 3 a.m. Look, I'm crazy. Don't mess with me." and I dipped into the most southern accent. "Hey, y'all, don't forget, I'm crazy." Like dipped in and I was like, "Don't mess with me because I'm crazy." And they just, "Oh, okay." It's like, why is this big guy yelling at us? And I just took off. But yeah, I am as I'm sitting here in my house and it's probably 68 degrees in my house, I have the fans on and I'm still like, man, like I'm not ready for May yet. It's been so nice and cold.
Yeah.
And, okay. So Chicago's one of my favorite cities. Like San Francisco's up there at number one.
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't Knoxville, it'd be San Francisco, but Chicago is right behind that. I don't know how big you are into sports.
Couldn't care less, Jody. Could not care less. But tell me about it.
Diehard Bears fan since I was a kid. Like diehard Bears fan. And I love the Blackhawks. As problematic as that name is now. That's ice hockey.
Yeah.
And then but then it's funny because the exact opposite, baseball and basketball, it's LA, Dodgers and Lakers. Right. And it's so weird that I like two teams from the same city. Like,
it's good you've consolidated your your sports.
But yeah, the like diehard Chicago fan, also big dude. So I love that they eat hearty meals in Chicago. A lot of bratwurst. Like that's my jam. Like I'm all about that. So Chicago for 6 years.
Yeah, and that was an accident. I was, one of my college friends needed a roommate. I was like, well, I don't like living in Missouri, so I'll come up there. I'll stay there through the winter.
Was it hard to get into the music scene there, or were they pretty welcoming?
Interesting. I found some very welcoming communities. I don't feel like I was ever really there were certain music scenes or cliques that I really wanted to be a part of that I didn't feel ever let me in when I think about it now. But I also back then in particular did not believe that I was good or worthy of any acceptance anyway. So I probably wasn't trying very hard or doing myself any favors as far as that goes. But I did find wonderful community and connection and, in retrospect, success more than I was aware of at the time.
Okay.
Honestly, when I think back to some of the shows, like my first album release show, it's like, holy cow, like a lot of people were there. Why were they there? And, playing the Old Town School of Folk Music and, like things worked out. I the networking, I made relationships that were very helpful relationships in terms of career stuff. Oh,
I was going to say, and I know this has always been a bigger thing in more of the independent music scene did you also, because you found all those people in Texas, then whenever they went off back to their cities, did you all start trading shows? Like sure. I've got a lot of friends who do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, having those relationships are crucial when it comes to indie or grassroots touring. Those reciprocal, respectful relationships where you lend each other your audiences. And that's a big way you build anything. So I started touring a lot in those years, being out on tour as a duo with my side lady at the time, Ari. We'd be out for 3 months, just touring. But in those years, my first album, For You Only, had a lot of sort of folk scene radio play success and accolades and reviews, and like that again, the kind of thing where in the moment I don't think I realized how well that record was doing in its particular genre space. I was oblivious because I was never doing good enough as far as I was concerned. Nothing was ever working, or I was real hard on myself and not just seeing the negative back then.
I feel like that's how it is with a lot of artists. Like
Yeah.
always, the stock line, you're always your own worst critic. Like I'll
Oh,
look at
holy
work
cow.
I
Yeah.
did a year ago and I was like, what the hell was I
Yeah.
thinking? Like this looks dumb. Why
Yeah.
did I do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So Chicago years
Yeah.
and you
Chicago.
record that album. Cause
Yep.
when I think of Chicago, I think of more, I'm thinking like rock, blues and rap. Or like when I think of
Yeah.
Chicago artists, so singer songwriter, that's why I asked like if it was easy to kind of meld into the scene there.
Yeah. There's also sort of like a roots, and I was more folky in that time. So there was
Okay.
also a pretty strong folk and roots scene.
Okay.
There was a strong folk tradition that started in the 60s and the 70s, and the Old Town School of Folk Music was a kind of a central part of that. John Prine is from there. Yeah, we're from Evanston. And there's this venue called the Hideout.
Oh yeah.
The Hideout
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
my favorite venue in the world, still probably. And so that was sort of that was the main place that I would play as the years progressed. That was the place I wanted to play when I moved there, and that became true. So put out for you only, and then Without a Bird was my second record, and that one I strayed from the folk world, and the label that had put out the first one didn't want to put out the second one, which was really hard for me. And I felt at the time that Without a Bird was a total failure and a flop. And that was very hard, a very hard thing to weather at the time. Still sucks to think about it. And then after that, Aeneas and I released the country EP. It's
Okay.
a split EP of country duets, and that was on vinyl 7-inch. That was in 2008. But by that point, I had already decided to quit playing music. I decided I was done making music. I was
And
done being hungry for success, and done feeling like a failure, and done working so hard and not seeing the point.
at this point you had been back to the Texas Festival. Is that what made you stop going after 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I probably went to Kerrville to that festival 4 years, maybe
Okay.
5 years. But then when I decided I was quitting music, I wasn't just quitting music. Like in a way, I sort of walked away from, I shut the door on a lot of friendships and relationships because it hurt too much for me to maintain these friendships with wonderful people who are still doing all I wanted to do. But I felt like my relationship with music and my hunger for success was toxic and not making me a better person. And I had no identity outside of music, and outside of performing music, and outside of caring what strangers thought of me. And I knew that was not healthy.
Right.
And so I decided that I would rip music out of my life, and I would see what identity was left. Like I would see who I was.
Right.
Yeah, like I did not know who I was if you took away the music. And you can't build a life on the hunger for affirmation. You can't be a good friend, a good partner, a good,
Right.
So
When
it was a painful experiment.
in this time, you're touring with your friend, are you then coming back to Chicago and doing like pickup jobs in order to make it, or at this
Yeah.
point when you quit music, are you like, all right, I need to find a permanent gig, like a job
Right.
job?
Right. No, I was never very good at that, or driven by that desire.
Right.
Yeah, my life was funded by music and coffee shop jobs and nannying. Like I was always either
Nice.
making really fancy coffee for people, I was always very good at that job, partly because I'm an early riser, so I can get up at 5:30 and
Ugh.
be bright and shining by 6. And I remember what your favorite drink is, and that your
Ugh.
mom is visiting next week, and like
I'm usually going to bed about 5:30.
oh my God.
I'm the exact.
Yeah.
I just had this discussion. A friend of mine has a coffee cart here, and the pre-pandemic they were setting up at like businesses, and at a big corporation like Whirlpool, and the employees could come down and buy coffee, and he would make it. But in the pandemic, you can't do that because people aren't in the office. And one thing that's grown out of that is there's a lot of PTAs that fundraise.
PTAs. Okay, yeah.
PTA, they fundraise and they buy coffee for all the teachers in the school.
Cool.
Which is awesome. So I've gone and helped him do that, but I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning or 5. And I just look, and he and I were talking the other day because he's also a night out. And I was like, dude, I don't know how you do it, because I can go to bed at 6 a.m., get up at 10 a.m. and be fine. But I can go to bed at 10 p.m., wake up at 4 a.m. and still can't function. Yeah. I was like, I don't. And he was like, I've been doing this for 3 years. I don't know how I do it either. I was like, okay. Man.
I could probably do that.
Okay. Yeah. You could do that. And you got the coffee experience. So it's interesting because he makes a lot of very sweet drinks. And so seeing a lot of people get very excited about something with a lot of whipped cream. And I'm usually talking people in. It's like, no, you didn't do you want whipped cream on here? Oh yeah. It's like, all right, I got you covered. And I'll just spray that whipped cream real big on there.
So good.
Okay. So your coffee shops and nannying.
Yeah. I was looking after kids. I'm good with the little people.
So before, so on my website, I still have this joke, and it says, my main business is like, we do graphic design, illustration, social media. And then I start listing all these other creative, videography, photography, SEO, web design. And the last thing is, we'll even babysit your kids if it nets us money. Yeah. And I say that because when I was in college and right after college, I babysat kids. And if you looked at me, no one would ever expect. I was like, no, I'm really good with kids. So trust me, I've had kids climbing all over me and just holding them up like King Kong or something like, I'm going to get you.
Oh, they love that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of my friend's little daughter who was over here, like, she had grabbed a blanket and said, hold this. And I held it. And then she had me drag her around my house on the blanket. And she's about to graduate high school. I was like, no. She's still that little 2 or 3 year old that I was dragging around my house while we were playing banjo. I was like, I can't do that. She's still a kid. She's not 18. Nope. She's a little kid. Yeah. But how did you get into the nannying world?
Oh, I got into that when I first moved to Chicago. I was walking dogs and just sort of cobbling together whatever I could. And my mom back home in South Dakota got up in church when it was time to be like, asking for prayer requests kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So she's like, keep my daughter Rachel in your prayers. She just moved to Chicago, and they were nervous about me living in a big city. Like that was real different from my hometown, right? Keep her in your prayers, keep her safe, and another mom in the congregation was like, Shirley, after church, Heidi lives in Chicago and just had a baby and needs somebody to look after her baby because she has to go back to work, and she doesn't know who she can trust in the big city, Well, of course she can trust a girl from South Dakota. So another lady who grew up in my hometown was living in Chicago, had a baby, and needed someone to look after her little baby, Dakota. And so I looked after Dakota. And that was a really sweet time. I'd be with him 5 days a week, and I'd keep a guitar there, and I wrote a number of the songs on that first record while I was taking care of Dakota. It was fun writing songs for him, with him, cooing away.
It's why, as big as the world is, it's still tiny.
It
Like
is.
I have that. Oddly enough, I was in Chicago that I stopped at this place, cigar. I smoke cigars, and my friends and I joke that we're trying to be the non douchey cigar smokers.
Hmm.
Like, because we use it for like community and relaxation. Because if you're doing that, you can't do anything else. You're just sitting there doing that. So I ended
Yeah,
up in this shop
focus
in
on it. Yeah.
Chicago, and this dude looked at me. He was like, "You're not from around here." I was like, "Nope." He's like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Well, East Tennessee." He was like, "Huh, East Tennessee?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Where in East Tennessee?" I was like, "Knoxville." He's like, "Oh, I have a cousin down there." And he mentioned what she did. And I was like, "Oh, you mean so and so?" And he was like, what just happened?" I was like, "Yeah, I know her. I had met her the week before. She was on this city committee with me." And he was like, and the whole time, the rest of the time I was sitting there, he's like, "I don't understand." I was like, "Dude, the world is very
The
small.
world.
It's very small, man." I was like, "This is not shocking to me." He was
Yeah,
also amazed that I wasn't shocked. I was like, "No, this stuff happens all the time. Like, the world is a very small place
it is.
if you let it be." Yeah. So
If you're paying attention, yeah.
if you're paying attention, so you're giving up on music.
Yeah.
Did you kind of go full force into the nannying and coffee, or did you like I
No,
find
what
a
did I do? I
a
went
more?
full force into a relationship for the first time
Here you go.
because my life hadn't allowed for that before. So I was starting to date the man I ended up marrying, Adrian. Um, what else was I doing? I was back to the coffee shop. Well, yeah, I think I was probably working full time at the coffee shop or close to it, and looking after other children at that point. Caesar, oh, he was a sweet boy. He was a great kid.
These are great names, Dakota and
Yeah,
Caesar.
yeah.
Not like Mike and Tommy. It's like
No,
Dakota
no,
and
no,
Caesar.
no. Caesar was so sweet. Um, yeah, I don't even hardly remember what I was doing. I was knitting a lot. Like I
Okay.
learned different things to get my creative impulses out. But I was like I didn't sing, I didn't write, I closed the piano. Like I didn't just stop performing and trying to have a music career. I stopped
Okay.
music. And again, just like it hurt. It hurt too much to make music and I needed to figure out what was left. Um, And so they did that for almost 3 years, just sort of zombied along. Adrian at the time said it was like being with a woman in mourning.
Oh,
It was a really hard time. There's no way
it,
around it. Like
in that
it's
3 years, did
yeah.
you have people from your community keep like poking you or reaching out to be like, "Hey, we're doing this thing. You ought to come and perform,"
Hmm.
or maybe like early on and then just stop because they saw that it was not happening?
I don't remember. I mean, I
Okay.
just really kind of feel like I just shut everyone out, and my life became very small there in Chicago. I should read back through journals and see, but I kind of stopped writing as well. Like I just powered everything down in this
Okay.
weird way. Um,
How long into the time in Chicago did this happen? Like 2 years, 3 years?
um, between between 3 and 4 years
Okay.
in, I
I'm
think.
forcing you to, I swear this is not a
No, that's okay.
therapy
It
session.
it really like those years feel so cloudy. And also, I'll be honest, like so Adrian, wonderful. He is such a dear friend. But the man who I was
Mhm.
dating at the time, and then we got married. Um, and but I was also like I had turned down a lot of my it was those years were a crucial
Okay.
part of my path and so necessary, hard as they were. But there were a lot of things in me that I had just muted, be it the music and be it um, there were things about the relationship that were not optimal
Okay.
or optimal for me. And I kind of turned down as many of those doubts, or I just sort of went quiet because it was safer to just lock in
Right.
and just exist. And
Get through the day.
this will work.
Yeah.
This, I can make this work. Like, he's a wonderful man. He loves me. This is a good job. I can do this. This is fine. This is good. And you can do that to a certain degree. And I think maybe a lot of people can do that for a real long time.
Yeah.
But,
I've got one friend that she, good Lord, she did that for 15 years and had 4 kids.
Yeah.
Like, to where it's finally like, what am I doing? Like, I've been doing this since I was 20. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, and then finally got out of it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you take 3 years, you shut it all down.
It was like 2.5 years. Yeah.
Okay. What was it at that moment that you're like, you know what? I got to get back out there. I got to start doing again.
Again, I don't have very clear memories of this time. I just know this day came, and I started to write a song called Words, which is on Ghost of Gardner. Ooh, words used to be alive in my mouth, trying to find a way out. The song is all about, like, I used to write songs. Like, there used to be all these words, these birds, like landing on my tongue, to be sung. And yeah, just, it's all about trying to remember how to do that again.
Okay.
And I started writing songs again, and I decided I started making music again, and I decided, okay, this time of quiet has made me a better person. It made me more compassionate. It made me a better friend. It made me a better sister, better family member, for sure. I'm just a more compassionate, present human, because I wasn't hustling for music the whole time. But I knew that for me at that point, to make music again, it had to be more sustainable, and it had to not just be my ego and my identity full bore. And so I started doing some music, more like theater stuff. I started teaching guitar lessons. I was in the rock and roll orchestra pit for a 6-hour condensed version of the Wagner's Ring Cycle, which was bonkers.
Wow. A lot of that. Wow. That's a lot of,
so
that's
Wagner's
a lot to
Ring
wade
Cycle
through.
It's
like 6 hours rock version. Good Lord. Okay.
Yeah. The Ring Cycle is, I believe it's a four opera work. And this was a condensed kind of rock and roll version, and I was in the pit for that. That was a lot of fun. But just doing different things, like letting music back into my life, but doing it in different ways that didn't keep me so desperate, I guess.
Doing it to where you're not trying to, I won't say achieve or unlock goals.
Yeah.
Of like, I need to play this room. I need to mount a tour that I'm going to hit 12 cities this year instead of 10,
Yeah. I was just sort of like tiptoeing back in, and like, how can I support other things? Like, how can I, by teaching 8-year-olds how to play guitar and learn their favorite song, how can I kind of be of service with song, as opposed to just having it serve me, maybe. And at some point in there, Adrian and I got married. We had a great party, and we moved to New York City.
Oh, wow.
Because he got into Columbia. And so off we went. And that was, after 6 years in Chicago, it was time to say goodbye.
Which part of New York were you in?
We lived in Brooklyn. We lived in technically Greenwood Heights, so south of Windsor Terrace, south of Park Slope.
Yeah.
A great little spot there for a few years. And playing more and more music and getting exposed to a lot more some really incredible musicians, man. Aeneas and her husband moved to the same neighborhood a month after we did. We were sort of, Adrian and I were in a sublet while we looked for a permanent place. We moved out. Aeneas and her husband Noah moved into that same sublet and looked for a place. And that was a wonderful time for my friendship with Aeneas. It was just really nice to, for the first time, be living in the same place. We'd go to the Y together and work out. It was just nice to just be boring friends that actually lived in the same town. And
that's an interesting way to put it. Boring friends.
Yeah, we'd always been like, catching, not like, now we're back to it again of just like catching up on the phone every, once a month or something, and like texting. Okay. And it's just different than just existing together and going for walks, But in 2012, she asked me, she knew that I was playing, that I was in a state of mind of wanting to make music again, but still not quite sure what the identity and what that needed to look like. Right. And so she asked if I'd be interested in being in her, touring with her. I had already started doing some touring with her as a side player. Within 2012 is when Young Man in America came out, her album, and I signed on to tour a whole lot for that one. So it was me, Ben Davis, who's in an amazing band called Cuddle Magic, her husband Noah, and Aeneas, the 4-piece band. So 2012 was a lot of that, and it was so much fun. And right before I signed on to do that tour with Aeneas, I knew that I was totally willing to like give over that amount of heart and brain and passion and support to be in her, like, she's my best friend, like to go and support her in this way. But I knew that was great, but I knew that by the end of the year I was going to be crawling out of my skin and wanting to do my own stuff and right. Like done with the shadow, being in the shadow. And so before that year of touring commenced, I packed my bags, said goodbye to my husband, and I set up shop in a little house in Eastern Tennessee, nice, on Laurel Lake.
Oh yeah,
to do a month-long, like, kind of artist retreat, just writing and recording and creating songs that I could then turn into a full-length album after all the touring with Aeneas was done. Kind of a way to remind myself that I matter, that I have my own voice, and that I wanted that to be the energy that I entered into that year of touring with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That
I'm not just a sideman. And so I made this little Laurel Lake EP, and I quickly hand sewed, 317 fabric sleeves.
I think I have that one.
You might. Yep.
I think I might.
But I didn't have time. Like the tour with Aeneas was coming up really fast. I'm like, I need to have something to show. Like, I want to have something for the merch table too. And I can't, like, oh God, graphic design and getting stuff printed. Like, no, I'm just going to sew this.
Right.
And so I just sewed hundreds of those things and went off on tour with Aeneas. And that was a great, great, fun, beautiful time. Yeah.
In thinking of that, in that album, this is going to sound very braggy, and I do not mean it to be. I think that was at a point where I had a corporate job, and I still do this, go like 65, 75 shows a year. Holy cow. A lot of shows, like the WDVX shows, Blue Plate or Tennessee Shines, they're so cheap, and I know how hard it is for musicians. I was like, what vinyl do you have? Give me something that I can help a little bit. Yeah. There's even one guy, I don't know, do you know who Ellis Paul is? Uh-huh. So Ellis, I found through a podcast I listened to, a comedy podcast that he's a regular guest on, called Never Not Funny. Huh. But he came through and did a Tennessee Shines, and he had his record, and I was like, hey man, I want to buy your record. And he was like, okay. And I handed him my card. He was like, card reader's out in the car. You know what? You'll just get me next time. And I am OCD as hell. So I was like, I owe Ellis Paul $25. He came back 3 or 4 years later.
And after the show, he was playing the blue pipe. I went to the show, and after the show, he was sitting down in the back checking his email or something. And I went up to him, I was like, hey, man, you do not remember me. I was like, but here. And he was like, why are you giving me money? I was like, and I told him the story. He was like, I can't believe you remembered. I was like, dude, I'm too OCD. I can't forget stuff like that. I owed Ellis Paul $25. I am not like the stubbornness. Like, I'm going to pay him the.
Seeing this through.
Yeah. So like you playing at Lila's house, I think it was either Pay What You Want or Very Cheap. And I was like,
yep.
All right, what vinyl do you got? Let me take a look at this. And I saw the knitted one. I was like, all right, that's too cool not to. I'm an artist. That's too cool not to get. I was like, let me get that thing. And that kind of goes into like you toured with Anais, but like smaller shows. Like when did the house shows? Was that something that was kind of always a thing, or was that? How did that come to be?
I've always done those.
Okay.
To me, the most memorable. The tours I put together that I book for myself, because mostly I'm doing my own booking. There'll be a mix of rock clubs and weird living rooms or backyards. I love that stuff. I think maybe partly because I grew up in South Dakota in a small community. I don't see the world through a city lens. Like, cities are not superior. Cities are not the only places there are venues. Cities are not the only places where there are arts, where there's music, and where you should bring yours. I don't. So I love playing in the stranger or out of the voices, having intimate musical connections with people all over the map. It's not maybe the best build a financial kingdom of music, but it's a very rich tapestry of humans and experiences and seeing so many different parts of the world beyond LA and Chicago and Denver and Knoxville,
Austin.
So I'll play a living room. I'll play in anywhere.
It's as much music as I see. I am so uncomfortable with someone sitting right in front of me singing to me. It just makes the hair on the back.
That's not for everybody.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, I love this. This is tough. Like, it's just, I do not like attention. And I feel like that's attention directed right at me. I was like, please stop. I can't do this. Like, it's.
Okay. So if I ever play a show and you're present again, I'll make sure to never look at you during the show.
I think I remember Lila's show. Again, I remember the little things. I remember I had to sit on the floor because I was terrified about breaking one of her chairs. And I sat there, and I think you almost kept running into my feet. And I was like, sorry. And you're like, nope. I'm just going to sit on the floor with you at some point. So, yeah.
Really?
I just remember it was funny. It was, and I remember you had a bass player with you for that show.
Ari.
I remember that. Mm-hmm. And didn't she play a few? Yeah. I remember very, very small details I think she played a song or two. Maybe not. Maybe I'm remembering somebody else at Lila's house.
Very surprised if that were the case.
Okay.
That was never really part of it. But yeah, I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, that would have been Ari Elbols, who was my side player for years. Unless I'm completely forgetting.
And maybe I'm thinking of someone like, I remember there was one show. It was so funny at Lila's house that I can't remember the guy's name, but he had been busking at the farmer's market downtown earlier that day. And I saw him. I was like, I think that's the dude I'm going to see tonight. And then I went to the show and it was him. And I was like, dude, I saw you. He was like, yeah, I remember you. I was like, what the hell? It's like, he's like, I don't know. I just felt like playing. I was like, okay. It's like, that's cool.
That's great.
I was like, that's just,
I've never done that.
That's hilarious to me. Seeing him. So you get back into music. You're touring with Anais.
Yep.
And this is, you said about 2012 or so?
2012, and then when that touring is over, I commute back and forth from Chicago to New York to make Ghost of a Gardener. I make that in a great studio in Chicago with my players who are still all back in Chicago, and I love that record so much. That was I had done a lot of personal growth between albums there, and that was making that record was the first time I knew what I was doing, and I knew how to ask for help, and I had faith in the process, and I didn't think I was just like a worthless sack of music making shit. Like I loved what I was doing, and I believed in what I was doing, and it's okay if it's not for everybody, and I'm doing it anyway, which was really different from the kind of more emotionally tenuous situation I was in prior for my music making. And so Ghost of a Gardener, that was a wonderful experience making it. Yeah, I was in my power, as they sometimes say.
How long did you last in New York? How long were you there?
I lived in New York for, I think, 2.5 years.
Okay.
I think I left in 2013.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. So making Ghost of a Gardener was pretty close to the end of, like, that was sort of the last chunk of my time in Chicago. My time in New York.
Okay.
And my time in my marriage. So 2013 is when Adrian and I split. And the strange, like, the parallels of life. Anais and Noah and I all left New York at the same time, and we moved up to Vermont.
That was going to be my next question. I was like, how, that, like, did she stay much longer? So you're all, again, you're staying above the, not the Mason-Dixon, the 80-degree line. I'm going to just keep calling it the 80-degree line.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget, I've always lived places that get to be, 100 in the summer and humidity.
Yeah, I know.
It's the extreme.
I'm just poking and joking because it's funny. It's living my dream.
Yeah. But then I lived up in Vermont for 2 years. And that was wonderful and necessary. And leaving a marriage is pretty intense, and there's a lot of emotional fallout, and you need some therapy. And releasing a record can be real intense. Ghost of a Gardener was a beast to release. Like, that was, the PR team just threw everything at it, everything I had, so much money.
And at that time, were you still doing a lot of, like, radio interviews and stuff like that at, like, indie radio stations?
Yep.
Because I'm thinking around this time, this is when social media is finally kind of starting to take hold, but still it's not being used like it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was still, I hired a publicist, and I was doing interviews and getting write-ups and all that kind of thing. I was on NPR's Weekend Edition for that record. Like, we really leaned into that one a lot. But I didn't feel like it, I don't know. I love that record. I don't care, how much commercial success it had. It was great. And touring that was the first time I did full band touring, and that was really fun and rewarding, and also really financially terrifying. That was a lot. It's a lot to carry on your shoulders,
Did you have, like, a tour manager or somebody helping you with that? It was all on you.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's
was very high stress in that way of just like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be driving and making financial calculations in my head and making sure I can pay everybody. And I'm scared.
I'm saying this totally as a joke. And the people in the back are like, where are we going to eat tonight? And you're like, I can't worry about that right now. I gotta go, man. I gotta get us there.
Like, yeah, that's, whew. But good experience, definitely. When that album came out in 2014, I want to say. Vermont, and then I don't know, in like 2015 or 16, I don't remember. I moved here.
Okay. I'm going to get back to that. But
Yeah,
throughout
yeah,
all this time,
yeah.
are you mainly staying in the States, or are people
Oh,
overseas getting to pull you to come?
lots more overseas. A
Okay.
lot more overseas, which has been a really big part of my touring and my like desire over the past 6 years, I suppose. In 2012, on the Young Man in America tour with Aeneas, we went overseas, and that was my first time touring over there. And so I booked I had always sold records over, particularly in the UK. So I knew I had a fan base, but I had never toured there. So I booked some additional shows at the end, kind of just like house shows, because I had no history. But on that tour with Aeneas, I made sure to build relationships that I could return to with my own music later. So talking with promoters and be like, I'm not just a side person for Aeneas. This is what I do. Here's my new album, kind of thing. So
And
that
I was going to say, and I remember when you all played, God, I feel like you got to trust me. My brain is just weird. I do remember her letting you perform solo stuff when you all performed at Morlock. Like that seemed
letting me perform.
Oh,
So
no, sorry. That
was,
seemed very, I just mean that seemed important to her of
to.
like, hey, this person is awesome.
Yeah.
Like almost like a showcase of like,
well, that was always a part of was a part of it. Like for a portion of those shows, part of the deal was that I would do the supports. I would do the opener set when the situation allowed. So it was not every night.
I didn't mean letting you in. I meant more
I had to
of
give
like
you some shit.
Very thanks. Very supportive of like,
absolutely.
This is my friend and she's a badass. So here she is. So it was kind of that way everywhere.
Similar. In the UK, that I would get to do a bunch of those opening spots when it was suitable, and which was really helpful. So that helped me begin building more of my own fan base in the UK and Ireland, which then I would make sure to return to. So for a while there, I was going to the UK, at least UK and Ireland, some years twice a year.
Okay.
So it probably evened out to 1.5 times. And I also started going to France, doing more mainland Europe stuff. Did a residency, a month-long residency in France. What year? In 2015, maybe, I did a 3-month-long European slow tour. I decided I wanted to really take my time, spend 2 or 3 days in each place, do some co-writing or recording or like video making projects with local musicians or friends that I had developed.
Yeah.
Play a show and then go on to the next town. So not just like show, but creating things along the way. And that was really great. The whole trip was 3 months long, and it included a month-long artist residency in France, in Normandy, in the northern part of France. And that was a very formative, it was a very powerful time for other reasons. Like this French witch that changed my life.
How is that not a song?
That's the whole story.
French witch that changed my life.
If you,
I feel like that needs to be a lyric.
So if there was this ancient key that was bequeathed to me, and then I was robbed of all my possessions.
Okay.
But Jody, the full story is captured in a song on my Captiva EP that I released a couple years ago.
Okay.
My Summer of Wandering is what the song is called, and there's a video for it. So the whole story is there.
I've probably seen it or heard it, and I'm just that's hilarious. Hilarious in that with retrospect. It's like, you know what? I got a song out of this and a cool video. So
oh my God, yeah.
It's worth it. Totally worth it. In this I had a question. Now I'm
sorry. France.
France.
Europe. Slow touring.
at what point did Patreon come into it? Because I know like a lot of like videos and stuff felt like they were kind of bore out of, well, this would be cool for Patreon. Like this would be, and that from the outside looking in, that looked like that scratched a creative itch. It was almost an excuse to do it, like, oh, cool, I get to do this thing now because I've got an audience for that. Like, at what point did that?
Well, and for me, it's a lot about accountability. Like, shit, I've got patrons. I need to create something. I need to earn their faith in me, and you know, that started. I was pretty early. Onto the Patreon platform in 2000 and I'm going to say 16 because I started, or maybe 15. I launched that when I moved here to Minnesota.
Okay. Because I think you were the second. There's a guy I knew that was an artist, Ben.
Yeah.
To where he would do a thing. It was like $10 a month, and he would send you like a print every month. So I'd already kind of known about Patreon when you launched it. I think I'm up to like 6 people that I'm back in, and I think 2 of them are podcasts.
Okay.
And 2 artists and 2 musicians. I think that's right.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting. I will say that one of the podcasts I support, it's still the most interesting idea for podcasts. It's this guy, Tony Thaxton. Shoot. I'm going to have to look it up because it's going to drive me nuts. He was in a band.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Thaxton was in, don't give me the albums. Motion City Soundtrack. Okay. He was a drummer in Motion City Soundtrack. But he has this podcast called Bizarre Albums, where all he does is do research and talk about weird. Like the first episode, cool. The first episode was the WWF album from the 80s. And then for the Patreon, he does bizarre singles, and he'll talk about one song. And it's always weird. Like the Munsters released an album. Here's everything you need to know about that. And there's some where it's like, this is a soundtrack from the Pink Panther, but nobody from the cartoon nor the movies perform on it. You know, it's just but the Patreon, it's all the singles are released on the Patreon. And it's a fascinating idea for a podcast. And I love
done. Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, I think, wasn't that what was that website called? Live Window, Concert Window?
Concert Window.
Is that still a thing?
Nope. They shuttered. Yeah.
I remember that was a thing because I remember long story short, I used to run a music website here in Knoxville called Knox Bands, and I got to know almost every musician in town. So I've got all these friends that are musicians. So, and seeing some of the stuff you're talking about, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen all my friends go through all this. The trading of the shows. There was this weird thing that happened like 6 years ago to where all these men and women that were in their like early 30s all of a sudden decided to become musicians, and they started forming these singer-songwriter nuts, and now they've all gone on to bigger performances and gotten to play all over. So it's always fascinating to me as being a fan and looking on the outside in and seeing stuff happen.
Yeah.
But okay, so Minnesota. What made you settle on Minnesota?
Well, because it's close to home, close to South Dakota. My folks and my brother and sister had both relocated here. Okay. And so for the past almost 6 years, it'll be 6 years in October that I've been here. I've been living in my brother's backyard. I live in a 320 square foot little house that used to be sort of his wood shop workshop attached to the garage, but we gutted it, and I have a little kitchenette. I don't have running water, but it's fine. So yeah, I live in this little, very not quite minimalist, more maximalist style house. Small footprint, but
I'm going to leapfrog forward to come backwards. Yeah. So, and I'll come backwards later. What made you get into the tiny home thing? Like, what was it that is that the official term you would use for this?
For what I'm living in right now.
Yeah. Or what? Because aren't you building?
I'm building a
Okay.
quote unquote tiny house on wheels currently.
Okay.
Out in the country. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you've noticed with my life path, it's been a little around.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, part of it was living in this intentional community with compost toilets and like
Yeah.
working the land and having a gray water system. And, you know, I'm a little bit hippie. And also, you know, since what, like when I was 21, I was living in a 3-bedroom farmhouse in
Right.
South Dakota. Then I moved into an apartment in Chicago. It was pretty big. And then I moved to New York City where you have to live really small. And I was married. And so I had to let go of like half of my possessions. And then I left my husband. So I had even less. And then like, you know, and
Even
so
didn't you
over the
say?
years,
Didn't you say Denver? It was 6 people in a
oh yeah.
three-bedroom.
Well,
Like,
that was, you know, before, you know, for a while, you know, I was taking up a lot of square footage just myself, but over the, you know, life has kind of whittled me down, and you kind of learn more about what you need and what you don't need. And also, I mean, very influenced by the fact that I'm a musician. I'm pretty poor. My life has no financial stability
right.
is not something that I've possessed. I never know how much money I'm making month to month, or I didn't until Patreon, and now like I subsidize that with other things. Like I've started this choir, but with the pandemic, you know, it's thank God for Patreon. But so I know better than to sign an expensive lease and have pay a mortgage, or like
You're
as a
smart.
single person with a wild career path, like it just hasn't been something that has been on my list of options.
You're smarter than me. As a single dude
Yeah.
but also I live in, although I don't know, Knoxville is it has been fairly, cost of living has been good. It's starting to go up. I feel like that's happening everywhere, where all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's getting crazy expensive to live anywhere unless you
Yeah.
live in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, the pandemic, owning my own small little design firm that's mainly me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mortgage is terrifying.
Yeah.
Mortgage is pretty scary. And I've got one friend that I have talked very openly and honestly about what's happened in the last year. And that's about it. And I've got like 3 friends. I've been like, once I get past this, knock on wood, knock on everything that I can.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll have a more honest conversation. And there's been something I will talk about off mic that I will not talk about on mic, because I have to ask a lawyer friend how much I can talk about. Something that is kind of shady when it comes to the real estate and mortgage world.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like this should be out in the open a little bit more, but not too.
At the time.
Yep. Nope. Okay. So you moved to Minnesota.
So, I moved to Minnesota.
Tiny
small
house. Yeah.
Currently, living in 320 square foot little tiny house on a foundation, and building a 330 square foot house on wheels. Been saving up for a while, and have some parental support. You know, they tried to help my siblings with their first mortgages, and they're like, they also, you know, tried to put all 3 of us kids through college, but I dropped out. I'm like, oh, well, okay, I guess you saved us money. So I mean, they're really wonderful. Right. They're really wonderful, and so it's right now the building project is kind of a joint effort, because they're going to be part of the reason I'm building the tiny house out in the country is because our folks are going to use it when they come up to visit. So it's the place I'm building now is out on my sister's property out in the country. Nice. And so they'll get to live there and have their own space when they come up to visit, and I'll stay in town with my gentleman friend. So and as far as, you know, living small, it suits me just fine. I think the smaller your overhead, the easier things are, like keeping your life as tidy and tight as possible makes a lot of sense for me. And throughout my whole life, I've always been one who looks at what other people are doing, like, oh, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. But that doesn't look right to me.
That's not for me.
That's not for me, you know, be that college or marriage or conventional job or a big house.
So with it being on wheels, is the thought to eventually post-pandemic start going on the road with that, or is it?
No, it's too large for that.
It's
I mean,
too
it's
large.
not,
Okay.
it's on wheels in the sense that I can relocate it, you know, a few times in its life or whatever.
Gotcha.
Like I can hire somebody, I could do it, but I could hire somebody
Right.
with insurance and move it to a different plot of land should I need to. But it's not going to be tooling around anytime soon. It's too big for that.
How much land is it? Are you pretty tucked away in the location that it is now?
The farm is kind of on the end of a dead end gravel road in the country, but the house the tiny house is in full view of said gravel road. You know, so I'm not like totally hidden. And you know, at tiny houses, there's a whole gray area on legalities and zoning and all that stuff, but it's technically an RV. It's plated as a residential vehicle, a recreational vehicle. And it's not a full-time residence for anyone because I'll be splitting my time between town and country. So we're hoping to avoid any trouble with the authorities. But you know, deal with it if it happens.
There's a couple I'm friends with that they, at one point, bought an old Airstream for very cheap that was a piece of crap, essentially. And I helped them for a year fix it up. They lived 100 yards as the crow flies from me. And all I think of looking back on it is like, how many of those things that we do that was probably not up to code? Like we put in the floor ourselves. I was like, I almost took off my friend's fingers because he was like, just push. And I was like, okay. And he said, push. And I pushed. And he had forgotten that he was holding. And he pulled his fingers down here. And he was like, I think we're done for the day because you almost took off. I was like, you told me to push. He was like, nope, totally on me. But yeah, it was wild. And then going out on the road, like they would be in Louisville or Charleston or Memphis, and I would go visit them anytime they were near. And his wife would go back in. He was like, man, the panel underneath almost came off. He was like, I'm not telling her because she'll kill me.
Terrifying.
And he was like, we got to get rid of this Airstream really quick because it's going to, he was like, I'm going to get caught and get in trouble.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to learn about electrical. I've been wiring up all the outlets, trying to do things to code.
Right.
Like, oh, it's a metal box, so I guess I have to ground. I have to. Yeah. to ground the ground wire in the box. Oh, right. Okay, good. Glad I caught that bit in that YouTube tutorial.
I grew up around a grandfather and two uncles that could do anything. Plumbing, electrical, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I bought my house, good Lord, I bought my house in 2003. I think 2003, 2004. So I've been here a while. And we took a month. I was still living with my folks, and we took a month. And my grandfather had already passed, but my uncles and I worked on this house doing stuff. And every once in a while, they'd look at me and they're like, damn it, boy, don't do it like that. I was like, well, you all are the experts. I'm just here holding
Tell me what to do.
Flashlights. Yeah. Tell me where to paint.
Yeah.
And then one of them would start working on electrical. I was like, I'm not getting anywhere near that. Yeah. I will fry myself. Like
I'm grateful. My brother-in-law, so my sister's husband out there, he knows a lot. He's an engineer, and he took the contractor's course or something like that because he built his own garage, so he has gobs of experience, and he's a smart guy, and so He's my kind of endless resource. I try not to make him do too much labor with me,
Right.
but I'd be like, hey, Andrew, can you explain this or tell me what to do? Or do you have a planer? Or,
I like that it's kind of couched in, well, I'm going to do this. And how can you tell me, oh, you'll just do it because you're certified? Cool. I'm just kidding.
No, I do it, but I like make him show me or like make sure I'm not going to kill myself and then I go do it. But I'd be a little lost without him right now.
And doing your research and everything is it kind of normal to build your own tiny home? Or is that something you're just like, you know what? I know a lot of this, or I want to learn
any of it.
Or I want to learn this.
Yeah.
There, I'll couch it in that.
A lot of people do, but a lot of people also hire out. And I hired somebody to build the shell.
Right.
So when I got it in I designed it, but when I took possession, when I took over the project, it looked like a finished house from the outside.
Okay.
Although it wasn't painted. And I've just been building out the inside. The inside was just a box.
Right.
So.
I have a carport, and my uncle had a carport, and we helped turn it into a garage. And then he was over here one day, and I was like, yeah, I think eventually I'd like to turn my carport into a garage and then build onto the back of the house. And he just looked at me and went, just buy another damn house. I ain't going through this shit again. Like, okay, never mind. I'll just buy another house because you don't want to help him. He's like, that's too much damn work. He's like, I'm getting too old for this. I can't do this anymore. It's like, all right.
It's good. He knows his limits.
Yeah.
It's
I was
very
like,
boundaries healthy.
Like, damn it. Okay. Okay. I think that's all I've got for Tiny House. So I'm going to go back to the music. So,
oh boy. I've been forgetting that I'm actually a musician because I'm just.
You're so focused.
I'm just like power tooling it.
Power
worn
tool
makeup
enthusiast
in a while.
right now.
Yes, that's me now.
You made a switch at a certain point from being a solo performer to being Her Crooked Heart. What was it that made that kind of switch?
Well, ever since I remember going back to 2007 when I released my second album, Without a Bird, I remember brainstorming with friends to try and think of a band name because I wasn't playing solo anymore very much. And I didn't want to just be just me making music. I wanted to be something a bit more expansive that I could define.
Okay.
So I had wanted to have a band name for, over a decade, I guess. And then in 3 or 4 years ago, when I had finished recording To Love, to Leave, to Live here in the Midwest. I recorded it in Eau Claire with a great crew of people. It was all done, and I had sent off to the vinyl plant to make the EP that came out before the record came out. It's called To Gentlemen. Is the vinyl EP that I released before the full length. And it was in production. It was just going into production. And there was a morning where I sat down to meditate, which I've been so off the wagon of lately, but stretches of my life I've been very diligent about doing that every morning, and it's the best thing to do. So this morning I was in a good stretch and I meditated, and suddenly out of nowhere, out of the silence uprose the phrase Crooked Heart. And I was like, holy shit, that's me. That's it. That's music. That's what I do. That's it. That's right. What this is. It's, flesh and blood and like real pulsing human beauty, and it's not perfect. Like things are messy, and and so I did some Googling to see if I could if anybody else had the band name,
right.
Or you always have to do that kind of Googling, and it seemed like I could claim it. And I thought adding the her crooked heart kind of feminized it, which I feel like that is a big part of me, is sort of singing about my existence, which is undeniably feminine. Like that's the lens that I write from, that I work from in my primarily autobiographical music making. It just felt right. And just like quitting music for a few years when I was actually, turns out, like I'd hit a stride. I walked away from music and lost tons of fans, lost tons of momentum, lost tons of name recognition because I vanished for 3 years. Because then you got to build yourself back up too, right? That was an incredibly stupid thing to do to my career, but I needed to do it, and I did it anyway. And changing the name that which you tour under, and rebranding after 10, 11, 12, 13 years of making music, also pretty dumb career move to make, because again, you're going to lose a lot of fans and name recognition and momentum, but I did it anyway.
I'm going back to I made all these connections in Europe. Oh yeah, I have to call them all and be like, hey,
by the way, different name now. That was, oh my gosh, I do not regret doing it at all. But it was a very well thought out, all the logistical things you have to do when you are changing your business name, from, finding every link to you, on the web that needs to be changed. Just, how you frame it, how you pitch it, how you communicate it, so basically I called the vinyl company, just like, hold the presses. I think the name is going to be different. Give me 24 hours. And changed it. And what that allowed me to do is to kind of separate out Rachel Ries from Her Crooked Heart. Like, I feel like I have my identity now that is my own, and I can do whatever I want. And the music, like, she has her identity and her focus, and the boundaries and the respect are much better. It also allowed me to think bigger and differently about what I create and how I communicate that. And it opened up to the full band stuff I'm doing now with 3 other women who are part of the band, Siri, Addie, and Hillary. Before the world shut down, the touring that we did for To Love, To Leave, To Live was the most gratifying, satisfying, joyful, emotionally healthy, financially healthy year and a half of touring I've ever done. And that name change and that identity shift was absolutely part of that.
I'm trying to remember the choral part. Did that come post-pandemic or pre-pandemic?
The choral part,
the choir,
the choir I started pre-pandemic, because you can't sing in community during a pandemic.
That's true.
I started the choir. I started a choir. It's called Kith and Kin Chorus. 4 years ago, probably. I guess.
Was that before or after the name change?
It would have been after the name change.
Okay, well, that's what I was trying to think. Is like with the name change. Did it almost be like, oh, this is limitless? I can also do this thing over here.
That's absolutely part of it. Like, Rachel Ries is a choir director, and she's building herself a tiny house, and she's a really engaged auntie helping raise all of her nieces and nephews. And, she can do whatever she wants. Like, I could, run choral workshops and like kind of build this whole other part of my life, run residencies. Her Crooked Heart is the music that I make, the band stuff that I do, the touring that I do. It's that part of it. And it's been really, I don't always do it perfectly, but it's tricky with social media a lot, how to, who claims what, but, but especially when you're not touring, it's like, what's Her Crooked Heart doing? I don't know. She might be taking a really long nap. I don't know. But
magically, she started incorporating drill sounds and saw noises into her her next album. I don't know why. That's what Rachel's doing over here. It has nothing to do with.
But
How,
Yeah, it's been healthy.
so you're talking about like a year and a half, like of goodness, and then the pandemic. Like, what has it
Oh
been
my
like?
God.
Like, I still remember March 13th because the week of
Yep.
of March 13th was the last day.
Friday, March 13th.
Friday the 13th, because I had gone to 4 shows that week. I was
Yeah.
literally at a show in Asheville Thursday night at a record release show for the Chrissy Lynn Band,
Mm-hmm.
and texting with a friend of mine who owns a distillery here, Postmodern Spirits. And he was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is about to get even worse. And I was like, well, shit. And so he and I and a PR friend started workshopping, because we have, do you know Big Ears Music Festival?
Yeah.
So Big Ears got canceled like a
Yeah.
few days before that. And I was like, he was like, we make so much money off of that. That's a huge part of our, here, I'll talk business for a minute. That's a huge part of our Q1 financials and part of Q4, making up for lack of Q4 going into Q1. And he's like, I don't know what we're going to do. So I literally started a support downtown Knox weekend, and we started working on it on the morning of the 13th as I had the news on, scene shut down. And then I was going to see Silver Sun Pickups that night at the Millen Mine, and they canceled it at less than an hour before the show. And there was part of me who was like, I don't even want to go at this point. All I've been doing is watching the news all day, and this seems terrible. What the hell are they still doing with this show tonight? And so on the opposite end, as a musician, like, what were you thinking? Like, were you texting with your bandmates of like, oh shit, like this is getting real really quick?
Yeah. I mean, well, we had, with the band, I'd been doing these, received these Minnesota State Arts Board grants, wherein we would go to different communities throughout Minnesota for a week at a time, working with students and senior citizens and college student, like just doing different programming from songwriting and poetry and just these arts outreach weeks that would culminate in a collaborative show with the community we'd been working with, and that we were supposed to have the culmination of the last one of the season was Friday night. And we had to cancel that, just so all of the unknowing and fear of that time. I mean, it was a lot of, and it has been a lot of, well, I guess we're canceling that tour, or we're canceling that show, or we have to, let's push that back 6 months and see what happens. 6 months comes and goes, and like, oh, I guess let's push it back another 6 months.
I've got one comedian that I've been supposed to see here that I swear he has pushed back the dates on his show at least 6 times. Like, it went from May to like August to like, it just keeps getting, and I'm like, dude, just cancel it and rebook it later. Like, at this point, like, you've pushed that back 6 times. Like, I don't know.
For me, like, in a way, it fell at the shutdown happened a month before our 4th season choir finale. So that was kind of a big thing. I mean, there's 65 people in the choir. And, tickets were all sold, and we've been working for, 8 months on this material, arrangements that I write. And that just sort of had to be stopped. And a big part of, a big part of all this for me has been sort of trying to figure out how to emotionally lead a choir through a time like this, when a lot of people, their one social and creative outlet that they would get once a week through rehearsal and through this community that's formed through my choir, that was gone and not allowed anymore. So how can we still connect? How can we meet on Zoom? How can we have video projects, or like what can we do to continue to be a connected community? That has been definitely a focus of this time for me. Luckily, the bulk of the HCH touring had ended.
Okay.
And we didn't have much on the books. We had another like artist residency academic run, and that all got shoved back another year. So that's starting again in the fall. Just rescheduled from a year prior.
Yeah.
I was supposed to do a bunch of touring with my friend Jamie Stone in his band. I'd do some sideman touring for with him sometimes. That was a hard chunk. Like for me, that is good money and really fun work because it's, you know, touring and it's not my emotional thing to carry around. Like I'm just showing up for somebody else and doing a good job, you know, and singing and playing synthesizer and, you know, it's great.
Nice.
You know, I was really, really grateful for the PUA, pandemic unemployment, like that. As a self-employed person, that I was able to reap some of those benefits.
That's the difference between living in Minnesota versus Tennessee, in that I got it last year, but it took literally reaching out to my state rep to get it approved.
Yeah.
And then I reapplied this year in January, and we are now, what is it, April 27th?
Yeah,
Still not seeing a penny.
Yeah.
Still not seeing. And I finally, also state of Tennessee, they will not answer the phone. You cannot leave a voicemail. And if you get on the chat on the website, I've tried this 3 different days. They either try to bounce you, or you will just sit there until 4 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central, and they're like, "Oh, it's too late. You can't email. There's nothing."
That sucks. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. The state rep, I finally got in touch with her, and she had to put like an act of legislation in to get me. And I now have it bookmarked to where I can update that. And I finally got on the phone with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, it's been approved by us. It's just got to be approved by the adjudicator. And once they approve it, then you should get backdated pay."
Oh, good.
Which is good, but it's also like, I was like, okay, so how long will that take? I was like, I understand this is not your problem. I was very nice to the person. I was like, I'm just happy to be talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And she was like, just keep checking in every 2 to 3 weeks. And at that point I wanted to go, so hold on. Can I patch in my mortgage company? And you can tell them just check in every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I told my state rep, I was like, "Hi, I'm someone that's still having a hard time finding work. Maybe hire me to do some of this." They're like, "Oh, we're so short staffed." I was like, "You literally have a database of people looking for work."
Yeah.
It's like, anyway. That's
sorry.
me. Was it yelling at the sun? Like old man yelling at the sun. But it's, I've heard that really helped last year. Getting that last year really saved my butt. And it's starting to, I'm getting a little bit of work here and there.
Yeah.
But it's, the big companies are still not opening their purse strings budgets.
Yeah.
It's the small stuff, like doing a logo for a friend. A friend of mine has started a cult here in Knoxville.
Okay.
It's a joke. It's a cult. But I did her logo, and I was like, just pay what you want. I'll take whatever. And she's like, okay, here's this amount of money. It's not enough. I was like, nope. Guess what? It paid my KUB and cell phone. So thank you for that. I was like, that's what it's about. I had to email earlier today. I'm doing a brand for a major corporation here in town that I started working on in January, and they still haven't made up their mind. I'm like, what are we doing? So, and I have to keep them on the ball. I was like, and my contact, I told her, I was like, you realize we've gone over budget at this point. She's like, yep. I was like, cool. That's going to be a very nice check to get in 3 months.
For you to get that one.
In 3 months when that finally comes through. So there you were talking at the beginning about, or earlier on about not having a dedicated path. Like, I'm the first and only artist in my family. Mm-hmm. Nobody else. Dad was a truck driver. Mom worked for the phone company. Yeah. And they still kind of don't understand what I do, but they're like, oh, I don't know. He designs menus. I'm like, sure. Sure.
My folks, it was really cool when I started the choir and when they came to the first season finale of the choir, and they've come to rehearsals now, and for them to be able to see, like, my work has always been impressive to them, like my music work, but also like baffling. Like, what is your life actually like? What's your, like, we just have no frame of reference for what I do. But when I started the choir, that was a whole different thing. Like, I come from a choir background. They sing in choirs. Like, to see me merging my secular music world with the choral world that I was raised with and creating a hybrid thing was really cool for them to see and to experience and understand in a new way what I do or what I can do. Yeah.
On my end, it's more typical Southern. I always joke that, and I'm going to say maybe problem. I don't know. I'm a man. I'm a Southern man, and I'm a Collins man. I was like, that's a level of just shoving down everything that is bar none. And I always joke, like, my dad has never said he's proud of me, but I hear from everybody else of like, oh yeah, your dad will not stop. I was like, okay. And he finally gets it. That's nice. Yeah,
that's great.
I just laugh. I'm like, but man, we cannot say it to one.
No.
I was like, we are idiots. Like, this is 2021. Why in the hell?
Yeah.
Like, I just laugh. I think it's funny at this point. It's so dumb. But yeah, when I worked at the print shop, I was the only designer and I was the pre-press manager. And my, dad was a truck driver for a company. Mom worked for the phone company. And they're like, why can't you take a day off? I was like, because if I'm not in there, the presses aren't running. They're like, you're not that important, boy. You ain't that important, boy. It's like,
thanks.
And then one day I was so sick, I could not wake up. And Dad just kicked open. I was like 21, 20. He kicked open the door. He's like, boy, I called your work, told me you ain't coming in. You better sleep. And I was like, thanks, Dad. I'll do that. Just passed back out.
He does love you.
Yeah. It was, that's the way he should. Like, that's the funniest part. I love it. I think it's hilarious. But yeah, they still don't. My mom is very Southern and very sweet, but she is so cutting. Like, it is hilarious. Like, she got breast cancer. This is going to sound very bad at me. She got breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And there came a point through chemo, I would take her to chemo and stuff, where I've been bald essentially since I was 25. Mm-hmm. And she started losing her hair, and she's like, honey, she called me. She's like, honey, I need you to come over. I'm starting to lose hair. It's getting in my food. I'm waking up. Mm. It's really rough. And since you have so much experience, being bald. And I was like, wow, Mom, just the knife right to the gut.
So much experience.
She's
so like, you came over and taught her how to pick her.
I shaved her head for her. But it was funny. I was like, do you want me to do guard or no guard? She's like, no guard. So I shaved like half. And then she pulled up a mirror and she's like, oh shit, I didn't mean that short. No. And I was like, too late now, Mom. And she's like,
what it is.
She looked at herself for a minute. She's like, I'm still damn cute. I was like, yes, Mom, you are. And then I finished shaving her head. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get my stuff and go. And she's like, why? I was like, because Dad's on his way home and I don't want to be here being the one that shaved your head. She was like, all right, sweetie, I'll talk to you later. And let me go. I was like, oh God, y'all are the best. Like, they're the funniest.
That's
Dad.
Great.
And going back to music, I always like telling stories on Dad, because when I was young, like, big truck driver dude, big bearded. I know that's hard to imagine looking at me.
I know, right?
But he had the weirdest, most eclectic taste in music. Like, it was, of course, like old ZZ Top and Charlie Daniels Band and Otis and Temptations and Staple Singers and the one I love the best, Pet Shop Boys. Yes. He's like, I like that song. I was like, what the hell, Dad? Pet Shop Boys, big truck driver.
Love
Those
it.
do not add up. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I like that. He had a guy he worked with that did wedding DJs and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he would give that guy like $5 or $10. And that guy would make a mixtape and actually like mix it of whatever was popular at the time. So that's how Dad found a lot of music.
That's great.
But I love telling him on the Pet Shop Boys. And then when I was in college or right after, I finally got into jazz. and I made like a jazz mixtape, and he kept having me make burnt copies for people he worked with or to give to people. Like I probably sorry musician, but I probably gave that.
How could you?
Yeah, burnt CD, but it was all mixed. So it was actually getting people to learn. And it was a weird mix of like traditional stuff, like John Coltrane doing, Miles Davis doing In the Wee Small Hours, Chet Baker doing My Funny Valentine. I was like, get him reeled in with that. And then I would do more like Ornette Coleman. A little
weirder. Yeah.
And then there's this band I love called Spain. That he has he has a song called World of Blue, which is one of my favorite songs. And I put that on there because it's kind of a bluesy jazz. So that is, you would actually know who that is. Spain is Josh Hayden. His dad is Charlie Hayden.
Yeah.
And then his sisters are Petra and all that dog. That's his sisters.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And that's Josh. And but yeah, I put that on. I was like, I'm going to put whatever on here. So it's been interesting giving that back to him. And there's been some stuff I was like, hey, listen to Earl St. Clair, who's a newer artist. And he was like, who the hell? And he listened to it, was like, that's pretty damn good. And I was like, yeah, it is, Dad. Welcome to the club. Like, I love it. It's so great. So your parents finally get what you're doing, but pandemic hits. So was there I don't know how to say that. Was there a time of depression or relief, or was there a time of like, I've got to start doing Zoom shows. I've got to start doing something. Or was it like, I need to focus on the house at this point? Like, what was it like?
It started with fear and relief.
Okay.
And gratitude because I didn't have a tour booked that I had to cancel, like so many friends.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it kind of came at a good time. That summer, pre-pandemic, the summer was going to be pretty quiet, and of me working up the material for Jamie's tour and writing arrangements for the 5th season of the choir. So it was going to be sort of a homework time anyway. As things stretched on, certainly a feeling of obligation to do online shows increased. But sort of, part of that was sort of in a duty bound way, like everyone else is doing it. If I don't do online shows, am I failing? There's it, because I could have just easily just hunkered down and read books and powered down for a good long while, but I kind of felt like I had to still keep showing up. But I really, really enjoyed doing that series of working through my full catalog. So I don't regret that at all, and it taught me a lot about audio and getting those systems in place was intense, but really gratifying, rewarding. And man, so much time has passed, and now, the house building was something that just, once that started, that it just sort of, it was the right time. Right. So now I'm just sort of throwing myself into that. I don't know. I do not know, Jody. I don't know what music looks like after this. Enough time has passed that touring? I don't know. I don't think I can really do that hustle in the same way anymore. Like, if I had a booking agent who wanted to do that stuff for me, I'd be way more inclined. I still want to make music with these women, but yeah, I guess maybe I don't know what the future looks like. I know the choir work, right. So like emotionally, I went through some low spots, but I'm good at being home. I'm good at kind of keeping quiet. I'm good at building things behind the scenes. And I'm pretty happy with that. But I worry over, and I'm anxious about the future, because I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work to get back out there and tour and do that whole thing. I think that the balance of my music making life will probably be different after this. Still be making things, but probably just releasing them, digitally and in some kind of handmade format, and doing my choir and living in my house. But unless someone wants to book some tours, then I don't think I'm going to be out hustling in the same way, which is fine. And it's also really sad. But, sometimes I sit with the thought that maybe I'm done touring, that past year and a half, I'm going to cry now, that past year and a half with Siri and Addie and Hillary, like that is maybe the end of my touring.
I would
and if that is the case, like it couldn't have ended in a better way.
Yeah. What a way to go out.
My job is done, it couldn't be better. So,
I don't
but
know.
obviously I'd miss it a lot.
I feel like this entire year, so many people have been pushing to be like, no, we need to get back out there. No, I was like, just be okay with what it is and figure that shit out later. Like everybody, I'm like, you don't have to make that decision right now, because you never know. In a year and a half, it could be like, holy shit, I miss playing live shows. I'll do whatever I got to do to make that happen. So that's my thoughts, is like, it's okay to be uncertain now. And I think a lot of people are not okay with that. I was like, no, it is what it is, man. You got to do what you do. You followed your own path. Good Lord.
Sure did.
I have a whiteboard here. I should start tracking it. I think I would need to add another whiteboard off to the right somewhere to get it to work.
And you're right. It is okay to be uncertain. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, one thing life has taught me over and over, you don't know shit. You think you know what's going to happen? You think you're stable, or you're secure, or you're what? No, you don't know. Life will pull the rug out from under you. So, I try to be better about not knowing anything. I don't know. And so for me, it's really great that I have this very tangible, physical house building project, in my arms. Like, okay, you don't know the future. Let's pound in some more nails.
So I've got a question, damn it. I should ask this question earlier, but who knows? Like, this doesn't have to mean life. Like, do you have any goals left?
Do I have any goals left?
Like in music, to where it's like, you know what? I've done this thing with the choir. I would like to pair that with a symphony. Is there anything that's like, you know what? This is going to be in the back of my brain, and there's going to come a point where it's going to come to the front of my brain, and we're going to make this happen.
There's quite a few of those things.
Okay.
My work is not done, but I'm trying to think if some are top secret.
Okay.
I'm trying to think if I have.
While you're thinking, I'm going to grab something real quick.
What I have that I can share.
And that's okay if you can't.
Yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. That I have still some pretty big and wild and weird, ambitious, arts related, creation related.
Yeah, it doesn't have to do with music either. Like, so I have this box that I've had forever.
Yeah.
All it is full of ideas.
Really?
And I actually joked that if I could take a year and money wasn't an object, and even like producing these things was not an object, I could still never make a dent in this box. Yeah. It's all Post-it notes and little pieces of greenish yellow paper of like, oh, this is a cool idea I had. And even more on my computer. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, Post-it, like, they're everywhere, of all these ideas. Beautiful. That I just laugh. I'm like, eventually, I don't know, maybe these are never. Maybe in 120 years, when I finally pass away, somebody will look through this and go, what the hell did this mean? What did Find Pedro mean? It's like, oh, I don't know. It must have been some crazy idea. That's my favorite joke. Somebody, I don't know who said that. I can't give that to credit to anybody, but said that they put a little scratched out, ripped out note in their wallet and said, "Find Pedro." And their thought was, if I ever die in a car accident, I just want somebody to look at that and go, "What the hell does this mean?" I was like, "Oh my God, that's a great idea." Like that
is good.
That's a great final joke. But yeah, I think it's great. I think I would rather have a box full of ideas like this than completely be void of creativity.
Well, and just the box itself, or like containing it itself, it's good. You always remember that ideas are that they have a place, that they matter.
Yeah.
It's your endless reminder to keep on.
Keep on thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I think at hour 17 of this, we are finally coming in for Eleni. I really cannot thank you enough for being on. Sorry if I OCD'd or remembered out.
You're good. You're the boss.
But thank you for being on.
You're so welcome, Jody. Thanks for having me.